Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty for December the 17th, 2021, and it's episode number 39. And today we thought we'd talk a little bit about walking foot attachment for your sewing machine. And I'm sure you've heard about them, but you may not know what they really do. And there is some confusion because different manufacturers of sewing machines have different systems. There's a standard walking foot that is somewhat universal for most machines, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then there's what we use on our machines, because we have Janomes, and they have a system called the AcuFeed system, which is basically a walking foot on steroids.
However, those are usually on the more advanced Janome.
On the higher end machines, yeah. You don't get it on your standard $300 Janome. It's the higher machines. For example, Walter has it on the 6700B. I have it on the M7, and I have it on the Skyline S7 as well. It also was on the 15,000. And there's other models of the Janomes as well that have this system on them. So we're just going to go through. We've got a couple of video clips and some pictures and things. We're going to talk about what the difference is between a standard walking foot and the AcuFeed system. And by the way, we're not trying to sell you on one system or another. This has nothing to do with it. We're not sponsored by Janome, although if they wanted to.
And I'm sure that other manufacturers have something similar to the system that Janome has.
Bernina, I know, does. I'm not sure what Bernina calls it. But anyways, we'll talk about that of which we know, and that is the Janome, because that's the machines that we have. But we're not necessarily stating that the Janome's way of doing this or Janome's AcuFeed system is superior to any other system. It's whatever you can get for your machine. So basically, what's a walking foot? Well, a standard walking foot is a special foot that attaches to your machine. Usually they attach to your machine they have a little bar that comes out from them, and it rests on or clips to the I don't know what you call it, the needle holder of your sewing machine, the screw.
It's actually your yeah, it's the needle holder, sorry.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, law.
I stand to be not corrected by you.
Yeah.
There's probably a name for it, not sure what it is, but it's where the screw is for taking out the needle, putting in a new needle, tightening up. There's a little arm, it rests on that. We'll have a picture of that in a moment. And it goes up and down as you are sewing, and it has a set of feet on top built into it. So you have your feed dogs underneath, you have another set of what are like feed dogs with this device on top, and it pulls when you doing fabric in 2 layers or more, it pulls your fabric more evenly through your machine. Now, if you're a quilter, you know what I'm talking about, because we're always putting 2 pieces of fabric together, but sometimes we make them into a sandwich. We have layers in between, the batting, and it really helps to pull all of that through evenly. And we'll talk more about this even feeding business in a second. But the best way to really show you this is Janome has a YouTube video explaining the difference between a standard walking foot and the AcuFeed system. So I've taken just a little piece of that I'm going to show you right now.
First off, you've probably seen this foot before. It's a standard walking foot. We also sometimes call it an even feed foot. The way that this foot works is this lever right here sits on top of the needle bar when you put it on your machine. And anytime the needle goes up and down, the needle bar goes up and down. And this tells the even feed foot to raise and lower the extra set of teeth that are on the top of your machine. This is great because having this extra set of teeth on the top of your feet that works with the feed dogs that are on the bottom of your machine, it really helps you move fabric through more evenly. So this is our standard even feed foot with the needle bar that goes up and down. But let me show you a little bit about how the AcuFeed feet work. This right here is our standard AcuFeed foot, and this one works is it still has the teeth that are engaged when you're stitching, but instead of a bar, you can see there's no bar on it. that sits on the needle bar and just goes up and down when the needle goes up and down to engage the teeth. We actually have this little hook right here, and this little hook right here, when you put the foot and attach it to your machine, it goes into a little spot on the back of the machine. And this is a great feature to have. How that works is once we put this hook in, instead of the needle and the going up and down when the teeth go up and down and those just moving together, you can actually feed through these teeth a little bit better, because we can tell how much fabric is pulled through with this machine. On the side of the machines that have the AcuFeed foot available for it, there is a knob, and by adjusting that knob, you can adjust how much of a bite those top feed are giving as you're going through the machine, and you can adjust that for your exact purposes and what you're needing. The other great thing that I love about our AcuFeed feet is that they have interchangeable feet on them, so you're not stuck with like the even feed foot just having kind of an extra standard A foot on there. You can use many different feet.
So that gives you a brief overview of what the difference is between a walking foot, a standard walking foot, and a AcuFeed foot are. As I said, the AcuFeed foot is a little bit more sophisticated because you have the ability to adjust how much fat or how much of the fabric it pulls at one time with that knob on the side of the machine. And that's custom to Janome. Whereas your standard walking foot, you can't do any kind of adjustments really on it. And if you take a look at this picture that I have right here, this shows you what a standard walking foot looks like. And you can see where that person's finger is pointing. There's a little white thing sitting on top of the screw that holds the needle in. And that's essentially how it works. You attach it to, just like you would attach any foot, to the one screw on the left-hand side, and you make sure you have that little arm on top of the needle holder, needle screw, and that's what makes it go up and down. And these are readily available. Some machines will come with a standard walking foot, most don't. It's usually an accessory you have to buy. They're not usually that expensive. It depends on the machine. And most of them are fairly universal. So it's not like you have to necessarily have specifically a Janome walking foot for a Janome machine, if your machine doesn't have the AcuFeed system to it already. So, how do you attach this other one to the machine? Well, I found a little video. It's courtesy of Kim Jameson Hurst of The Quilter's Way. And she did a video at some point in time showing this. So I just have to get this up here. And give me a second. Okay, so I think I can show you this. And she does a very good job of showing you very clearly how you put the walking foot, the AcuFeed system, how you engage it in a Janome machine. And I'll do a little bit of a voiceover on this as well. So we'll just switch over. Okay, so here you have a close-up of Kim, and you see at the back there's a hook, which is different from the way you put on a standard walking foot. That hook goes into a little slot there, and it locks down on a bar, and then you screw it in to the side of the shank the same way as you would any foot. And make sure you have it tightened up, because it can bounce out of that hook at the back, and I've had that happen. Now you got to change your needle plate. You put in, you can use it with your straight needle plate, but it does come with, or you can put in your zigzag needle plate for it, especially because you can use your walking foot for doing more than just straight line. Now on the Janome, you have to activate it, and that's what she's doing here by hitting that little symbol up at the top, and it just gives you a warning saying, you know, have you got everything in there that you need to have. And that's all there is to hooking it up to the machine. It is not a difficult process at all.
However, on my 6700, That machine that Kim's showing it on is a different machine than
Yeah.
what I have. On my 6700, I don't have to do the activation.
No, my machine has that button. Now, this was something I discovered, which is very good. To you can use your AccuFeed system without having that button. But what that button does on the upper models, I have an M7, and that's what she was showing it on, is it allows for the feet both to work at the same time when you're using it for quilting. I didn't realize that I wasn't really getting the full benefit out of that without activating that particular button on my machine. But Walter's machine does not have that button. It just does everything automatically, I guess, or it doesn't have the sophistication. Because with that button too, I can adjust certain settings that you can't adjust on the machines that don't have the button with the AccuFeed.
Well, I do have a knob on the side that allows me to adjust.
Yeah, that adjusts, but this activates more. There's other features. I haven't used all the features with it because I've used it on when I need to use it. But that's there, and it does help. In fact, there was a one person that's a member of the Quilter's Way. We were talking about this one day, and he was talking about his Janome 12,000 and how much he was having trouble with it when he was trying to do some quilting, like straight line quilting, wavy line quilting, using his AccuFeed system, and he just couldn't get it to pull his quilt sandwich through the way he thought it should. And I said, "Did you turn on the button?" And it was ironic, I had just discovered that button about the day before as well. Helps to read your manual, so always read your manual. But anyways, that shows you how to hook the AccuFeed system up. Now, does your sewing machine, if it have the AccuFeed system, come with this foot? Well, it will come with one anyways. It may come with two. There's actually 3 different feet and different parts that you can get for it, adapters. And let me see here. I think what I want to talk about, the first one is, I've got pictures of these to explain what each one is. So I'm just going to go to the first picture here. So this is the standard AccuFeed walking foot attachment. And you can see it has an open toe with it. Now, this is where I said about changing your needle plate. For example, they're showing a stitch here, a decorative stitch. Well, you would need to go to the zigzag plate for that because your needle's going to go back and forth, and you can't do that with just a single holer with the, what they call it, a straight stitch plate, because you'd break your needle on that. Now, one advantage of the Janome machine, the AccuFeed, is it'll give you that little warning you saw in the video to make sure you've got everything set up right. Ask me how I know that you could have a little disaster, because I have forgotten. I didn't heed the warning. Now, in some cases, what the AccuFeed system does too, there are certain stitches then, because my machine, the M7, reads which needle plate is in your machine, so that if it needs to zigzag, it'll, for the stitches, it'll gray out all the stitches that need the zigzag if you have the straight stitch needle plate in it. Does yours do that in the 6700?
Yeah, it does. 6700
yeah,
does that.
Which is a really good feature, because I'm telling you, you'll break your needle for sure if you've got the wrong needle plate in there. So that's the open toe. And the whole idea with the open toe too is so you can see where you're, especially when you're using a decorative stitch, where it's going, or you're using a zigzag, for example. You want to see if you're joining 2 pieces of fabric together, butted up with each other, you want to know where your needle's going to make sure you're catching the fabric on either side of that. The next one is the 1/4 inch foot, and this is more for those of you that are quilters. And this one is one of my go-to all the time. I use this one all the time especially when I'm sewing binding onto my quilts. You can see it's got that little black piece. See if I blow this up a little bit. Right here. That's your guide. And you push the 1/4 inch button on your sewing machine settings. Your needle will move over into that place, and it's exactly 1/4 inch from the edge of that black piece to where the needle is going down. So you're going to get a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you've got, I mean, I wouldn't use this for just straight piecing. I have a 1/4 inch seam foot, but it's not an AccuFeed for that. The reason is it's overkill. I don't need to be pulling through my fabric from the top and the bottom when I'm piecing. But when I've got layers with batting in between them, like my backing fabric, my top fabric, and my batting, yeah, I need that, because otherwise the fabric won't feed through evenly. It'll slide all around. It doesn't give you good grip. But saying that, when you use, do you have that foot?
I have that foot as well. I also have a standard regular foot that has the 1/4 inch seam guide on it as well. And I do use both of them for garment sewing. Not all the time. There are often times where I need to put in a top stitch that goes around the edge of a seam that needs to be 1/4 inch, and this helps me a lot. And it gives me a nice straight stitch, especially if it's visible on the outside of the garment. So, and occasionally use the walking foot to do it, especially if I'm sewing on a stretchy style of fabric or on something like a stretch cotton twill. It feeds both the top and the bottom part of the fabric more evenly and reduces the amount of stretch or pull on either side of the fabric.
So that's a good use for it too. Now, this one is set up, that you see in this picture, has been set up for a 1/4 inch from the seam. But do you have to use that? No. You notice that there's a fairly large hole up in here. You can click on a button that will pull this needle over to the middle of your plate, and that'll give you a 1/2 inch.
No, actually, I think if the needle's in the middle position, you'll get a 3/8 inch.
I thought it was a 1/2
It's
inch.
a 3/8 inch because that's what I use for sewing all the time.
No, I always thought, well, geez, I thought I was getting a 1/2 inch when I did that. Not that I use a 1/2 inch much.
No,
in
I use
quilting.
that. I do that. The other thing I sometimes do is if I need a 3/8 inch stitch and it needs to be even, I'll use the 1/4 inch foot on the side and have the needle in the middle position.
Okay, learn something new every day, but I don't sew garments. The other thing, though, if I want a 1/2 inch, I can move that needle further over to the left to get that over here as well. Oh, actually, no, I just remember what I do. It's very, I don't do this very, very often, so that's why I'm forgetting what I do. What I do is I move it over to get a 1/2 inch over here away from the edge of the seam. I don't, but yeah, okay, never mind. I know what I'm doing. Nobody else knows what I'm doing. All right, so that's the 1/4 inch. I guess they call them an adapter. They just slide in, and you can slide them back out. And there's many different adapters. For example, the next one I want to show you is the stitch in the ditch foot. Now, again, this is really great for quilters because this is when you're doing your actual quilting. So you've got 3 layers of material going through your machine. So this is going to pull your layers through evenly, and it allows you to do the stitch in the ditch because you line the little black thing up. It looks like the edge guide on the 1/4 inch foot, but it's sort of in the center. And it's very easy then to stitch in the ditch because, well, usually people call that stitching about the ditch because it is not easy to do it free motioned like because you got to be really good at that. Also because your fabric stretches and it moves, so it's not necessarily an absolute straight line, and you can have that problem when you're doing it with the AcuFeed system too, but it's closer than doing it without that foot. So would you have any purpose for using the stitch in the ditch?
Yes, I do. I use it all the time. Usually, a lot of times when I'm doing, not just if I can use this foot, or if I use the standard stitch in the ditch foot, I can use that as well. Actually, it's actually on Janome. It's called the blind M foot. But for the standard foot that isn't walking foot, but if I can use the walking foot or the standard foot, if I want to make a 1/8 of an inch top stitch line on the edge of my garment, and it or a slightly bigger stitch or whatever. It depends on where I put the needle, where I position the needle on the machine on the other side of that guide, and it'll give me a nice close straight stitch, top stitch on the edge of my garment.
Okay.
Now I can, on this foot, I can do it on either side of that guide, depending on which side I'm guiding the fabric on.
Yeah, I was going to say that because I just did some placemats not too long ago. And when you told me about this, because I had not thought of that, I was doing a top stitch. And so what I did was I put the edge of my placemat up against the guide, almost like I was using a 1/4 inch guide, except this is over further, because with the 1/4 inch guide, no, that's not what I used it for. Yeah, I did. Because I was just thinking, I could use the 1/4 inch guide though for that too. Because I was going to say, I put the edge of my placemat up against that edge guide so it's over further, and then I could get the, oh yeah, but I couldn't get it as accurate at 1/8 of an inch as I could on there with using this one. So yeah, you can play around with them. There's no real fast and hard rule.
But actually, the fact that it's got the guide on the edge allows me to run down the edge of the garment and give me a nice straight line stitch. Like I've used that type of foot on a button band.
Just a second, let me.
On the button band, on the edge of the button band, just to give me a nice, really close 1/8 of an inch or a little bigger inch stitch all the way down the button band to give me a nice straight stitch. So
But
so
why-
it doesn't look so when I'm wearing a shirt, it doesn't look like it's all crooked.
But why could you not use the 1/4 inch guide one?
The problem with the 1/4 inch guide is it won't get close enough to make it a 1/8 of an inch.
Okay, that's why I used it on the
Yeah.
placemat. Okay. I'm glad you're here. You're telling me these things. Okay, so that's the stitch in the ditch foot. Now, this is, and I'll blow this up a little bit. This is the zipper foot attachment. Now, of course, most sewing machines will come with a standard zipper foot. But the beauty of having this little adapter with the AcuFeed system is because you're usually, well, if you look at this picture, they're going through fairly bulky fabric. Because if you're making a bag, for example, you've got the lining, if it's a lined bag, you've got the top fabric, and in between that, you've also got the edge, like the zipper tape part as well. So trying to keep it straight and going through all of that evenly can be a bit of a chore depending on the type of fabric that you're using. So this just helps. It pulls everything through evenly, and it works just like your standard zipper foot does, except you've got the AcuFeed system pulling it through. This is not something you can do with a standard walking foot though, and this is a difference here. A standard walking foot is not going to allow you to get as close to the edge of the zipper as you would like to the teeth. Now, do you use this attachment?
I have this zipper foot attachment, but it's a recent purchase, and I haven't had to put a zipper in using it yet. But I could see many advantages to using it because of having problems with the fabric slipping.
Yeah.
When I do with a standard zipper is I'll use a type of glue or steam-a-seam or something like that to stick the zipper in place so it won't move. But I think it'll be a bonus next time I put a zipper in to use this type of walking foot.
Yeah, well, I just bought one too for my machine as well, because actually, until I was doing some research for this video today, I didn't know that existed. And then I thought I'd found something brand new. So I go upstairs and say, Walter, do you know about... Yeah, I've got one. And I went, oh.
In fact, you were with me when I bought it.
I guess I don't remember these things. But shoot, I could have saved some money. I didn't have to buy that. You might wonder how much these attachments cost as well. Well, the zipper foot attachment was only about $25 where I go to get my products at Ultimate Sewing. But I did have to buy different AccuFeed foot for it. It doesn't just fit on the ones we've already been showing you. I had to buy the narrow foot, and that was another 40. So yeah, the feet are expensive. But if you're doing a lot of bag making and you've got an AccuFeed system, I think it's worth the investment for it, because I don't think you would regret buying it. Okay, so the next foot, let me zoom out of here. Well, here's the 2 feet. This is the standard one that usually comes with a Janome that has AccuFeed system, and that's where the open toe one goes in here, the stitch in the ditch, and the 1/4 inch edge guide foot goes. This is the one, and it's called the VD foot. Is the one that it's not like a disease. Yeah, never mind. You can't catch anything from these. It's where the zipper one has to go in that. But there's also, it comes with this foot. The zipper attachment is optional. This foot, you're going to say, well, why? What's the difference between these two? This one has an open. It's hard to see in this picture. See if I can blow it up a little bit. But you see it's got a wide slot, same size as here. But why would you use this foot? For more delicate sewing, things that you have less space, you want to get right in close to. I use it for binding my quilt, because I want to get as close to the edge of the binding as I possibly can to keep it from flopping up. I just used it this morning actually on a quilt I was finishing up, and it works really, really well for that. Do you use that foot?
I have used it. I don't use it as much as I should. But, I have used it a few times. It depends. I tend to use the other foot a little bit more. But I do like the foot. I have used it a few times. So.
There is a 3rd foot that sometimes also comes with the upper end Janome machines, and it is narrow as well. It's called the HP foot, but it doesn't look, and I don't have a picture, I don't think, of it.
It's a non-walking foot.
Yeah, it's a non-walking foot, but it works with the system. There's another shot of the VD foot right there. The other one is just a little narrow, and it already has, they sometimes call that a 1/4 inch foot as well. But it's set up for, HP stands for high performance. It's for people who love to sew fast, who just can zip through things. It gives you very accurate, it's more stable at those speeds. Like you've got the whole machine going at, what, like,
well, up to probably around 1600 stitches per minute. My machine will go up to 1300 per minute. I've never used it at that speed. But...
No, I'd be afraid to go that fast. And in this picture, by the way, as an aside, you can see, this is what I was talking about binding. You notice where they're lining it up with the edge of the foot, and then the needle's over on the far side. You can adjust it with your machine, and it gives you that nice close stitch right to the fold and the binding, which makes things just a little bit better in terms of...
Just make sure your binding's straight.
Well, that could be a problem. Well, actually, though, you can maneuver. You can maneuver with this foot around. Like if it goes off a little bit, and mine do, I can move it over. Whereas if I use the one with the guide on the side of it, I can't. And if I have to go over to the right a little bit, I can. I'm blocked. So that's an advantage of this as well. I think, is that all the pictures I have? I think it is. So let's go back to us. Okay. So that gives you an idea of what the system is all about. Once you've used it, you will use it quite a bit, because it's great for, well, quilting, obviously, but most of
the time I use a standard foot if I'm just using quilting cotton. But if I'm using like a stretch cotton twill or something like that, I'm almost always using a walking foot, because I like the way it doesn't pull the fabric sometimes. I've used a standard foot on that before, and then occasionally I get puckering or an uneven look to the way the fabric is sewn on the top of the fabric. So I started using walking foot on that kind of fabric, and I found it gives me a much more even look for stitching on a what do you call it, on a regular basis, or like consistent basis. So and that's why I would use it. And I know lots of people that will use the walking foot for even quilting cotton when they're doing a shirt using cotton and that too, because it does give you a nice even. You're kind of assured that both your fabrics are being pulled relatively evenly on both sides. So
now, I do know that some people in the quilting community that have this system on their sewing machine will use it for piecing as well. I don't. I don't like using it for piecing because I find that it's overkill. But one of the advantages of this are if you've got to your fabric, you want to ease your fabric in a little bit, you could use this system for that. Or a standard walking foot too. You're trying to get your intersections lined up and you've got one piece of fabric that is feeding through your sewing machine at a faster rate using just your standard feed dogs. The walking foot will help you with that in lining it up. Now, there are other tricks you can use. It's the placement of your fabric. What goes on top, what goes on the bottom. And I think you put the one that's got more fabric to it on the bottom because it'll feed through faster. That's without a walking foot. But if you have a walking foot,
I have actually used the walking foot when I've been trying to ease in sleeves. There you tend to have the sleeve, because of the curve. It has the one side's a little bigger than the other, and for some reason the walking foot seems to be able to help you with that a little better.
Yeah. Now, my next question for us is the overall evaluation of the AccuFeed system. Is it worth the money? Yes, I think it is.
After having owned a machine that has that feature on it, if I were to purchase another machine, whether it's Janome or another brand, I would be looking for something similar.
Yeah.
Because I find it's a real huge advantage. To give you more control.
Yeah, and actually control is a good thing, because if you look here at this picture, I'll put this picture back up again. You see here, this is your standard needle screw that holds in your needle. Well, if you're using the standard walking foot with that little bar that sits over top of it, that's not very reliable, because it's depending on your up and down motion of your needle shaft for making the walking foot move. This is independent. This has got a hook, special hook in there. It's independent from this. So for example, if your needle bar here was bent, then that might cause you some problems. Or you can have it slip off this as well. Maybe a little bit more rare, but if your screw here is coming loose and you have that bar here, it could flip off and could give you some problems with it. I know I broke one that way on my very first sewing machine, which was a Brother. I had a Brother walking foot on it, and that's what happened to me. It broke very easily. Now, mind you, that machine was a fairly cheap machine, and I don't know, the walking foot probably wasn't the highest quality either that I had with it. But that's just another thing. If you're going to use it a lot, you might as well have something that's not going to easily break with it. So yeah, I think it's worth the money. I've used it for a lot of applications, and I'm sure I've used it for ones I can't even think of right now.
It's a good feature to have.
Yeah,
it's a good option to have. Like if you're having trouble feeding fabric through or something, it's nice to have that option to go to something like that.
Yeah. Have you ever used it with really slippery fabric or even vinyl?
No, there was a project I was supposed to be working on vinyl, but I never really used it on it. I have used it like on when I was sewing what do you call it, fleece fabric, which is very stretchy.
Yeah.
And jersey as well. And it really makes a difference.
I just wonder how well it would work on vinyl. Say you're making a pouch with a see-through panel, like a vinyl panel, and I wonder if it would allow, like it would grip it better for pulling it through a little bit more evenly if you're sewing like the vinyl on top of fabric.
I'm not sure how it would work. I did try vinyl a bit with regular foot, and I didn't have any problem with that.
No.
So I don't know if walking with foot would be any better or not.
I don't know. I've really never tried that. I know you can get a Teflon foot.
Yeah, I
for
know,
that
but
kind of thing,
I've
but-
heard or read. Actually, one of the ladies that taught the class I was in said that she didn't feel the Teflon foot really was any advantage. But I don't know. I never used a Teflon foot. I just used a regular foot, and I didn't have any problem with that.
Oh, well, something to experiment
Mind
with
you, the
someday.
vinyl I was using was very stiff.
Hmm.
And I think if you were using a lighter quality vinyl, it might have not worked as well.
Well, something to experiment on in the future. So, bottom line is any walking foot is a plus for a lot of applications we've talked about. The AccuFeed system is, like I said, a walking foot on steroids, but Janome is not the only sewing machine company that has a similar system to
So it
this.
just sort of goes back to, when you're buying a machine, some people say, well, I don't need all those stitches, or I don't need all this other stuff on it. And it's like anything, like when you're buying a car or a washing machine or something like that. Sometimes they come with the upper end models come with features that you can't get on the lower end models. And this is one of those features.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ends up coming with a pile of stitches you may never use, but this feature itself is a big feature.
Yeah, the reason we're talking about this today is because somebody on one of our lives asked about a walking foot and what the AccuFeed system was, because there is a lot of hype when you go into a sewing machine dealership that deals with Janomes, and they will tell you, oh yeah, well, this machine, it's upper end, it's got the AccuFeed system. And is that just something you're never going to use? Is that just hype? Is that how they're trying to sell you a higher price machine? Because, people say, for example, well, I don't need all those decorative stitches, so why am I paying for all those things I'll never use? Well, people could say the same thing. Well, I don't know what an AccuFeed is, and I'm sure I can get away without it, and I don't want to spend the extra money to have that feature. Well, I'm saying, yes, you do want to spend that extra money.
Like if you take my machine, for instance, the 6700P, is there's another model just below it called the 6600P, I believe it's called. It's not sure if 6600 or 6650, but anyway, mine has a silver top on it, and the 6600 has a red top on it. Other than that, machines look identical, and so somebody might go into a store and say, well, the red one looks exactly like the silver one, and it's a lot cheaper, right? Mm-hmm. But the red one doesn't have AccuFeed, and the silver one does.
Yeah, so that's the difference.
So
in the
that's
price.
where the big difference in the price ends up becoming, is one has the AccuFeed and the other one doesn't. And I'm sure that the 6600 is a great machine, but you'd end up having to use a standard walking foot on it as opposed to having the AccuFeed system. And for me, after having this machine and having the AccuFeed system, it would be I would not have picked the red machine or the 6600
knowing what you know now.
Knowing what I know now, yeah.
Yeah. So I hope we didn't confuse you too much with this, but if you want more information, I've put a link to two very good videos about the AccuFeed system in the show notes below. One's by Janome and one is by Kim Jameson Hurst, who is an ambassador for Janome as well as running the Quilter's Way. And their full videos are in the show notes below. I only showed you a small little clip from each one of those videos today. So check those out if you want to know more. Okay, so I think that's it for us today for this topic. If you have a topic you'd like us to delve into, please drop it into our show notes below or in the comments section, or send us an email. Email address is in the show notes, and we'll be happy to see if we can, help you out with that if we know. And like this one, I did a little bit more research on this, so I learned a few things from doing this myself. So any parting comments? No. Okay, so that's us for today. Hope you have a good week, and we'll see you for the next episode of So Chatty. Bye for now. Say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.